The September sun still clung to the pavement when school let out, and Lisa Marie Presley stood alone on the sidewalk, her little frame swallowed by the oversized navy tote slung over one shoulder. In her hand, she clasped a crumpled note. Again she reread the scrawled words, then tucked it into her pocket. Across the street, a lone biker, tattooed forearms, cigarette dangling, leaned on his idle machine and spat a lewd taunt in her direction. The laughter of other kids faded beneath the roar of an approaching engine. A sleek black Cadillac Fleetwood eased to a stop at the curb. The motor hummed quietly, the air conditioner whispering against the hot, dusty air. Behind the tinted glass, Elvis Presley sat motionless, hand on the wheel, eyes fixed on the scene before him. No entourage, no flashbulbs, just a father who had come to collect his daughter. As the window descended in a stately glide, neither abrupt nor theatrical, but inexorable as nightfall, it wasn't the king of rock and roll who was about to emerge. It was a man reclaiming his child's safety with a single, silent gesture. Elvis sat at the wheel of his black Cadillac Fleetwood, engine idling softly on the curb outside St. Augustine's Academy. The late afternoon heat clung to the chrome and glass, a sweltering blanket that promised thunder. He'd driven himself here, no chauffeur, no entourage, because today was Thursday, Lisa Marie's pickup day, and he refused to let her wait a second longer than necessary. Across the street, children poured out of the school doors in a tide of backpacks and laughter. Golf cart lights blinked as teachers shepherded streams of 8-year-olds towards waiting parents. Among them, Lisa Marie stood alone, small and still, her rumpled backpack straps slipping from slender shoulders. She clutched a homework folder, its corners bent and smudged, against her chest, and stared straight ahead, lips pressed tight against a rising flood of emotion. Elvis watched the boy approach first. He was tall, 18 or so, the older brother of one of Lisa Marie's classmates, swaggering in leather and cheap tattoos. He snagged her gaze, grinned, and tossed something small, an empty soda can, dented and lifeless, across her path. Lisa Marie flinched, eyes widening, and the can clattered at her feet. The boy laughed, a cruel bark that echoed off the brick walls. Her face went pale. She looked down to pick up her folder, but the boy had already turned away, riding a motorcycle into the fading afternoon. Elvis's grip on the steering wheel tightened. The moment stretched. Screeching brakes, a shout from a teacher, distant thunder. None of it registered. All he saw was his daughter alone, shrinking in on herself. He reached across the seat, his heavy jacket brushing her untouched guitar case in the passenger side. He drew a slow, steady breath and opened the door. The clap of leather boots on asphalt sounded impossibly loud. Elvis stepped onto the sidewalk, jacket unbuttoned, tie loosened. A man who had once filled stadiums now moved so quietly that only those paying attention could follow him. He crossed the street with calm determination, each footfall deliberate. Lisa Marie didn't notice him at first. She tucked the folder under her arm, eyes shining with tears she refused to shed. When Elvis reached her side, the school bell rang, shrill and insistent, but his daughter didn't flinch at any sound but her own quickening heartbeat. She looked up, surprised and startled, as if she thought he'd vanished again. "You okay, sweetheart?" His voice was low, warm, carrying the weight of every late-night worry and missed recital. She didn't answer. She just clutched her folder closer, her hands trembling. Elvis turned toward the boy. The kid hadn't noticed him yet, busy revving the small engine of his bike, testing its rumble like a trophy. Elvis stepped forward without haste, stopping mere feet from the youth. He raised a single hand, palm out. "Hey," Elvis said, soft but unyielding. The boy's grin faltered, and he straightened, staring at this unassuming man who'd materialized out of nowhere. "Think you're funny?" Elvis continued. "Throwing junk at my daughter like she's trash." His gaze never wavered. There was no fury in his eyes, only a quiet authority, the sort that comes from knowing exactly who you are and how far you'll go to protect what matters. The boy swallowed, his bravado slipping. He took a step back, revving the engine once more, but it was a hollow gesture. He'd met real authority, not the tough guy act of a gang. He glanced at the school windows, at the gathering children, and back at Elvis. Elvis crouched to Lisa Marie's level, his broad shoulders folding forward. He looked into her eyes, steady and open. She blinked, surprised that Papa was here, really here. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "Come on," he said quietly. "Let's go." Lisa Marie exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. She slipped her hand into his, and he stood, guiding her back toward the car. The boy watched, engine silent now, sweat beading at his temples. Other children peered curiously from the school steps, their day-end chatter hushed by the gravity of what had just occurred. Elvis opened the Cadillac door for his daughter. As she climbed in, she placed her battered folder on the seat and sank down, shoulders relaxing. Elvis slid behind the wheel, closed his door with a soft click, and the engine's roar felt different, guarded, protective, ready to carry them somewhere safe. He glanced back through the rear window. The boy was still there, staring after them, a flicker of realization in his eyes. Elvis allowed himself a small, sad smile. He didn't need to say anything more. The lesson had been delivered. Inside the car, Lisa Marie unfolded her folder and pressed her thumb against a margin where she'd written her French homework. She looked up at her father, voice barely above a whisper. "Papa?" He turned to her in the mirror, his face gentle but unsparing. "Yes, baby." She closed her eyes, then looked back down at her folder. "Thank you for not letting him." Her voice caught. Elvis reached across the gear shift, taking her hand. "I'll always be here," he said, "no matter what." As the Cadillac rolled away, the school facade receded into heat-hazed distance. The roar of the engine faded into the hum of twilight cicadas, and for the first time that day, Lisa Marie let the tension slip from her small shoulders, resting her head against the cool glass, safe in the steady presence of her father. The Cadillac's taillights receded down the quiet street as Elvis guided the heavy car toward home. Lisa Marie sat silent in the back seat, her small fingers tracing the indentations on the edge of her battered homework folder. The night air, still steamy from earlier warmth, drifted in through the cracked window. The only sound was the engine's soft pulse and her breath, full of thoughts too big for her 8 years. Elvis turned off the main road onto a narrow lane lined with tall pines. Their long shadows danced against the car's hood. He glanced into the rear view mirror. Lisa Marie's shoulders, small and round in her blue jacket, slumped as if the weight of schoolyard cruelty still clung to her. He exhaled, shifting into first gear. The gravel driveway crunched beneath the Cadillac's tires as they pulled up to the modest 2-story house just beyond Graceland's manicured grounds. This place, his secret retreat, offered no grandeur, only comfort. A single lamp glowed by the front door, casting a warm pool of light against the wooden siding. Through the window, a grand piano rested in the living room, its black lacquer dulled by soft lamplight, waiting. Elvis switched off the engine, and he and Lisa Marie climbed out. She tucked her hair behind her ears, lifting her chin to look at him. He offered her his hand. She took it without speaking. Together, they walked up to the porch, each step measured. Inside, the house smelled of polished wood and well-worn leather. A single record, Dusty Springfield's You Don't Have to Say You Love Me, played on a turntable in the corner. Elvis stepped across the threshold, closing the door behind them. His boots echoed on the hardwood floor. He led Lisa Marie past the entry hall to the piano room. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the back lawn, where a lone oak tree stood sentinel. He flipped the light switch. The room glowed softly. Beside the piano, a small armchair waited, her place whenever she visited. Elvis gestured toward the chair. "Sit here," he said. His voice was gentle, the commanding presence of a father rather than a star. Lisa Marie lowered herself into the chair. He set her folder on a side table and swept his coat onto a nearby stand. Then he approached the piano, pressing a single chord. The note echoed in the stillness. He spoke without turning, each word carrying the weight of his own hidden memories. "You know, when I was your age, I believed I could fix anything with a song. But sometimes, words aren't enough." His fingers hovered above the keys. "Tonight, let's see what we can fix together." He began to play a simple progression, a lullaby he'd learned long ago. Lisa Marie watched his hands, how the lights caught the silver of his rings, the gentle drop of his shirt sleeves. The melody rose and fell, inviting. He paused, then looked back. "Do you want to try?" he asked. "Here, on the bench." She hesitated, glancing at her father's profile in the lamplight. Strong jawline softened by fatigue, eyes shadowed, yet filled with warmth. She stood and climbed onto the bench beside him. Elvis guided her small hands to the keys. "Middle C," he said. She pressed it, a pure tone. Then D-E. He nodded. "Good. Now, try C-D-E-C." Her fingers hesitated, but with his calming presence, they followed. The pattern emerged. Each note was a step out of the darkness. As Lisa Marie repeated the pattern, Elvis's mind drifted back to the Mississippi farm where he first touched a piano. The dusty board floor, his mother humming hymns while he tried to match her voice with his small fingers. He recalled the hush of the night, the ache of longing for a father he never met, and the healing that music brought. In that memory, he found a steady resilience he wanted to share with his daughter. He reached out and gently lifted her hand, guiding the fingers into a chord. "You see," he said, "music doesn't judge you. It doesn't mock you. It just waits for you to try again." Lisa Marie looked up at him, eyes glistening. A soft smile touched her lips. She struck the chord, C to E to G, and the harmony filled the room. For a moment, the world beyond those windows, the taunts, the loneliness, fell away. When the last note faded, Lisa Marie hopped off the bench and flung her arms around Elvis's waist. He gathered her tight, bending to rest his cheek against her hair. "I love it," she whispered. Elvis closed his eyes, holding the ache and pride together. "Me too, baby. Me too." He led her back to the armchair, tucking her legs underneath. She rested her head on his shoulder. "I'll teach you new songs," he promised. "Every week if you want." She nodded, eyelids heavy. "Can we start tomorrow?" He brushed a kiss on her forehead. Tomorrow. Down the hall, the world moved on. Reporters chasing headlines, electric lights flickering across neon signs, the crowds that cheered Elvis without knowing the man beneath the myth. But here, in this piano room bathed in lamplight, father and daughter found a sanctuary built of notes and understanding. And as Lisa Marie slipped into sleep, her head in her father's lap, Elvis stayed by the piano bench, fingers resting lightly on the keys. He let the silence settle, healing, restorative, promising. In that silence, he found his purpose reborn. Not to be the king of rock and roll, but to be the steady presence that allowed a child to rise again. one note at a time. The following morning, the hush that fell over Lilywood Academy was nothing like the chatter of ordinary school gossip. Instead, it felt as if the very walls themselves were holding their breath. Word had spread overnight of the mysterious man who'd strode through the doors of that little music classroom, plucked a belligerent instructor from his high horse, and led a sullen 8-year-old girl gently away. Parents arrived at drop-off in small clusters, exchanging half-heard rumors and furtive glances, as though they suspected any one of their neighbors might be harboring a secret too large for polite conversation. Inside room 12B, the seats remained empty. The piano's keys lay untouched, its bench unmarked by sneakers or scuffed leather shoes. Mr. Griffith, the theater-trained vocal coach, stood at the front, clutching his sheet music like a shield, his usual theatrical poise replaced by something more brittle, as if the air itself had stripped him of his bravado. When a few late-arriving students slipped in, wide-eyed and subdued, he cleared his throat, the sound cracked, and the hush deepened. "Today," he began, voice unsteady, "we will continue with our study of musical styles." Across the hall, the principal's office door opened just a crack. Through the gap, Miss Purcell, the school's headmistress, peered in. Her expression was composed, but her eyes flicked toward the empty chair at the back, Lisa Marie's place. She made a note, tapped her lip, then closed the door. No one spoke of it, but everyone felt the distance between who they were and who they would speak of in hushed voices later. At home, Lisa Marie slipped off her shoes and crept upstairs. Her small fingers brushed the spine of her homework folder, now pressed against her chest. Priscilla was in the kitchen, her shoulders slumped from the night's wear. She looked up when her daughter appeared, concern warring with the morning's fatigue. "Sweetheart," Priscilla said gently, "you okay?" Lisa Marie offered a faint smile that didn't reach her eyes. She shook her head, retreating to her room without a word. Priscilla watched her go, lips parted in a question she never spoke aloud. When the school called later that afternoon, an invitation for a meeting, their tone was regretful and clipped. They apologized for any distress, assured her that Mr. Griffith's conduct was under review, and asked Priscilla to join them at 3 p.m. sharp. No explanation beyond that. Priscilla set aside her sewing and took Lisa Marie's hand. Together, they drove through golden afternoon light, passing neat hedgerows and white picket fences that did nothing to soften the knot in Priscilla's stomach. The school conference room was furnished with sturdy oak chairs and a long table scarred by generations of disciplinary hearings. Miss Purcell sat at the head, flanked by Mr. Griffith, eyes downward, and Mrs. Halloway, the board representative, pen poised over a notepad. "Mrs. Presley," Miss Purcell began, voice calm but firm, "we understand that emotions ran high yesterday. Mr. Griffith acknowledges his remarks were inappropriate. He has tendered his resignation effective immediately." Priscilla felt as though she'd been left dangling mid-sentence. "Your instructors are renowned," she said slowly. "I chose this school for Lisa Marie because of the professionalism of your faculty. But I do appreciate your prompt action." Mr. Griffith bowed his head. "I understand, ma'am. I regret any harm I've caused Lisa Marie. I only wanted her to learn resilience." He looked up, eyes red. "It appears I misjudged what she needed." Priscilla stood. "Thank you. That will be all." She slid their coats on, her mind already racing ahead to the next chapter, somewhere far from scrutinizing stares and whispered rumors. 2 days later, Lisa Marie found herself seated on a weathered wooden stool on the veranda of her father's ranch property, nestled just beyond the city limits. Here, the air smelled of dry earth and cedar, and the distant lowing of cattle replaced the recitals of schoolchildren. Elvis emerged from the barn carrying something wrapped in cloth, hands steady, face determined. He unfurled the bundle to reveal an old reel-to-reel tape recorder and a single tape already spooled inside. He set it on a small table and clicked the recorder on. The voice that crackled to life was Lisa Marie's own, tentative but growing in confidence as she attempted to sing the simple melody he'd taught her. Elvis listened, arms folded, as the imperfections of youth. Slightly flat notes, moments of hesitation, filled the warm afternoon air. He leaned forward, rested his chin on his folded hands. When the song ended, Lisa Marie's cheeks flushed. "Was I okay?" He closed his eyes and let a slow smile spread. "You were you," he said. "That's the only thing you ever have to be." He guided her to press the record button again, and this time the melody was clearer, steadier. He accompanied her with gentle chords, his fingers brushing joint-tight across the keys. The barn doors stood open behind them, catching the breeze. "I want them to hear," Lisa Marie whispered. "I want them to know I can sing for real." He nodded. "Then we'll share it the right way." Word of the home recording spread quietly through the town's grapevine. A local radio host, Lee Big Tex Caldwell, heard the tape from a mutual friend and was moved by its unvarnished honesty. One evening, without announcement, he queued up the reel and broadcast it in full. As Lisa Marie's voice drifted across the airwaves, unyielding, unpolished, yet unwavering, the station's usual honky-tonk twang gave way to an echo of heartfelt truth. Listeners called in, some to express surprise that a star's daughter could sound so raw. Others offered support for Lisa Marie, pledging gifts of sheet music and lessons. Letters arrived at the ranch, addressed simply, "To the little singer and her daddy." Each envelope bore a stamp from somewhere new: Tennessee, Georgia, even as far as Ohio. When the final notes faded on the air, Lee Caldwell spoke softly. "If you needed proof that hope still lives in small voices, tonight you heard it. This is Lisa Marie Presley, singing her own song." Back on the ranch, Priscilla sat on the porch step. Knitting needles paused mid-stitch as they listened to the broadcast beamed in on an old transistor radio. Lisa Marie sat beside her, head on her mother's shoulder, glancing up with eyes bright and certain. Elvis emerged from the barn again, carrying 2 glasses of lemonade. He set one in Priscilla's hand, then sat on the step between them, wrapping an arm around his daughter. "She did it," Priscilla said, voice thick. Elvis lifted the radio and turned it off. The humble silence that followed was far richer than any applause. "She did," he agreed. "And now, she knows." They sat there, 3 souls bound by shared triumph, listening not for music, but for the quiet conviction that comes when a child's voice at last finds its wings, and the world finally listens. The weeks that followed Lisa Marie's unvarnished home recording were not marked by fanfare so much as by a quiet recognition that rippled through Nashville and beyond. Word of her voice on the radio had reached ears in Memphis, Chicago, even London. Yet rather than thrust his daughter onto a veneer of celebrity, Elvis chose to protect the sanctity of that moment, an intimate snapshot of a little girl finding her own song. One late October afternoon, the Presleys gathered in the woodland glade behind Graceland, where oaks and pines filtered the amber sunlight into soft beams. Lisa Marie sat on a fallen log, legs swinging, her battered reel-to-reel recorder on a stump before her. Priscilla hovered nearby, camera in hand, while Elvis, in jeans and a lightweight jacket, settled on another log and tuned his guitar. "Ready?" he asked, voice gentle. She nodded, breath catching as she pressed the red record button. He struck a chord. Simple, open, inviting. And she began again, voice clear, confident, no longer seeking perfection, but embracing her own imperfections as the very thing that made her singing real. When the last note faded, Priscilla let the shutter click once, twice. The silence that followed felt expansive, as though the woods themselves were listening. From the shadows of the pines, unexpected applause rose. The forestry crew, having paused their work, gave quiet but heartfelt claps. The moment was unscripted, spontaneous, an echo of hope springing up where it was least expected. Back in town, those who had first heard her airing on Lee Caldwell's program felt emboldened. A local benefactor, moved by the story of the shy outsider who would not be silenced, offered to underwrite a community concert for children battling illness or hardship. Elvis and Priscilla, without fanfare or press releases, lent their names and their presence to the event. Held in a modest school gymnasium lit by strings of bare bulbs and scented with autumn's last golden leaves. Inside, folding chairs filled with families who had once sat in darkness or isolation. Men and women who carried stories of loss, of fear, found themselves drawn here by nothing more than a whispered recommendation and the promise of a night where grief could relent, if only for a while. At center stage, just a piano, a microphone, and a single spotlight, Lisa Marie stepped forward in her favorite blue dress. She looked out at the faces before her. Children with tired eyes, parents with hopeful tears caught at their lids, neighbors whose skepticism had given way to expectancy. Elvis watched from the side, arms folded, heart swelling. He saw in his daughter a courage that belied her small frame. When she placed her fingers on the piano keys, rubbed her thumbs to shift her nerves, he felt the hush deepen. Then she sang, not the pop hits or Broadway show tunes she had practiced, but the simple melody she had learned at home, the song that had first borne her voice to the airwaves. Each phrase carried both longing and reassurance, that in this world, even the most fragile among us could be heard. As Lisa Marie finished, applause erupted so wildly it shook the rafters. Her cheeks went pink, and she glanced toward her father. He nodded, eyes shining. No words necessary. From the back, fishermen, factory workers, teachers, and doctors rose to their feet, uniting in gratitude for the small girl whose bravery had invited them all to listen. In the days after the concert, life at Graceland felt subtly altered. The home's halls seemed to echo with an added warmth, as though that night's clapping and cheering had been absorbed into the woodwork itself. Lisa Marie carried with her a new confidence, the knowledge that her story had worth beyond her fear. Priscilla found solace in her daughter's joy, and even amid the swirl of Elvis's career obligations, a calmer resolve settled over him. One afternoon, Elvis called a small gathering of studio musicians and engineers to the music room. He placed Lisa Marie's tape, her home recording, on the old tape machine and pressed play. The unvarnished rendition filled the room, her voice catching, a hesitant note sustained, then exhaled perfectly. When it was done, he turned to the assembled professionals. "This," he said quietly, "is the heart of music. Not the gloss, but the truth. I want to preserve it, release it, as a single, just as she sang it. Not to make charts, but to remind the world what real can sound like." For a moment, there was silence, then a ripple of agreement. Not everyone in that circle shared his star-born ambition, but they understood this request was different. It was not about selling records. It was about standing witness to authenticity. In December of that year, across radio waves and on modest vinyl pressings, listeners could hear Lisa Marie Presley's voice for the first time, not as a footnote to her father's legacy, but as a revelation in its own right. It played on small stations late at night, drifting into bedrooms and studios, laundromats and diners. Some heard it once, others listened on repeat, compelled by the unguarded sincerity of a child's song. Elvis received letters from strangers. A pianist in New York who said he'd resumed his own music after years of silence. A grandfather in Kansas who found courage to speak to his estranged daughter. A schoolteacher in Los Angeles who played the record for her class when bullies tried to break their spirits. Each note spoke of healing, of second chances, of the power in a single unfiltered voice. That Christmas Eve, the Presleys gathered in the music room as they did each year. The tree's reflection danced on the polished piano lid. Lisa Marie, now a little older and steadier in her notes, sat to his right. As he played Silent Night, he looked over, and she met his gaze. In that instant, no one spoke. Yet everything was said. The quiet triumph of truth, the grace that comes when someone listens, and the enduring bond between a father and his daughter, sealed forever by a song.